Hello everyone, my name is Susan Morales, and today I want to have a conversation with you about the shooting that happened in Nashville. But first, if you are new here, please subscribe and remember to like this video so that you can see more content from this YouTube channel, which focuses on exploring the Christian worldview. We discuss topics of theology, apologetics, and the Christian life. I would love to hear from you in the comment section and have you stick around. Today is not one of those videos that I would ever want to make for this channel, but I find that it's necessary. And I want to keep in mind that the audience that I'm speaking to, I will be talking to not just Christians, but to the people that are within the pro-LGBTQ plus, proponents of those views, as well as just non-Christians that are for or against those views. And I want to do so in a respectful way, and I want to see if we can find some common ground here. But I will say that the primary audience that I want to talk to today is that of the Christian community. And I want to raise this question to you. Should Christians be more outraged about the situation that happened yesterday in Nashville? And of course, in other times that similar things have happened to victims who hold the Christian worldview perspective. And I want to get away from the church, lingo that is very firm in the way that they use words about Christianity. And of course, as a Christian, I believe that the Christian worldview is reality. It best describes the reality that we live in. And of course, I believe that it is the only true worldview, but I don't want to use that kind of language because I think for this video, it gets in the way of everybody who is involved in this conversation from really being able to hear each other out and make progress, finding middle ground. I think it's very important for us to discuss this as worldviews for the sake of this video. Christians, as a Christian personally, and maybe you identify with my experience, when I saw this, it was just one of those things that my mind goes straight to, the Democrats, the political leaders in particular, are going to use this again to promote, their political views against guns. And it's unfortunate because that's where we resort to as Americans, which is not how we should respond in a situation like this. Even if you do completely believe that that is the solution and you're super frustrated by Republicans or whoever is against, being more firm, however you would consider firm about guns. I want to suggest that we are people before we are, politicians. And so there should be a hush moment when something as violent as this happens. We need to just come together as humans, especially as just Americans, as Americans, and pause our political views for a second. We should all mourn for the people that died. We should all not be desensitized about what we're hearing, because I think that's a major fault of one of the political sides. It's like it becomes so like a political prop to just make a political point and to just say, here's another case, and we don't pause and we don't really think about Who were the victims? Who was the aggressor? What was really going on in this particular situation? Who are the people that are beside themselves today? How can we respond in a sensitive manner out of respect for those people, especially who may not share your political convictions? That's why I say let's hold off on our political views for a second. Let's not just get on TV like the president did and make a political point and in a way be self-righteous about, if you guys would have just done what I've been trying to push, this wouldn't have happened and you guys are responsible.
My name is Joe Biden. I'm Dr. Joe Biden's husband. And I ate Jenny's ice cream, chocolate chip. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream. By the way, I have a whole refrigerator full upstairs. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. God. I just want to speak very briefly about the school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. Ben and I have been doing this our whole careers, it seems. And it's just, it's sick. We're still gathering the facts of what happened and why. And we do know that as of now, there are a number of people who did not make it, including children. It's heartbreaking, family's worst nightmare. And I want to commend the police who responded incredibly swiftly, within minutes, to end the danger. We're monitoring the situation really closely, Ben, as you know. And we have to do more to stop gun violence. It's ripping our communities apart, ripping the soul of this nation, ripping at the very soul of the nation. And we have to do more to protect our schools so they aren't turned into prisons. The shooter in this situation reportedly had 2 assault weapons and a pistol, 2 AK-47. So I call on Congress again to pass my assault weapons ban.
So we're so quick to put the blame on our political opponents, or as we would see it now, we don't just see each other as opponents, but we see each other as enemies. And to my point in this video, I think that Christians can also become so desensitized, and I'm sure anyone can relate to this. If there is something that is being done to you so much that you become desensitized and it just becomes kind of a normal thing, that you're just so tired, you don't even want to put in that mental energy to go through that moment. So Christians, I think, are very desensitized are very used to just not being given the proper respect in a situation like what happened in Nashville yesterday. And I wrote a post in my community section where I shared my thoughts. Before listening to any commentators on this, I just started to notice that what's going on here? Why are the headlines seemingly more concerned with how this murderer identified? It just seemed like there is so much concern over that before this even happened, right? There's such a push, even in the government, for people to use the proper pronouns. And to me, that's how it came across. Now, when I found out, okay, that they might be emphasizing that not just for the reasons that people promote to use proper pronouns, as they would call it, right? Proper pronouns. That might be a hint as to the motivation for the murderer's actions. Okay, fair enough, I'm not going to just suggest that all media platforms are more preoccupied about identifying the murderer as how they identified, but there might be a reason for news platforms to include that. But what I also noticed was, and again, not all media platforms, but from what I was seeing, I was noticing that if there's such an emphasis on making sure that everyone knows that this person was transgender, why isn't there the same energy going into making sure that people knew that the victims identified as Christians? And that's where I believe everybody has become so desensitized, because there is this subtle message in our country that it's like we are told Christians don't matter. Your views are harmful to the people that we're trying to promote. You are slowing us down in this country. Your views are hateful. And so, to my point in my post, why aren't we emphasizing that the victims are Christians? The institution was a Christian one. The victims were Christians. Obviously, if they went to this school, they come from families that want their children to grow up in a Christian environment. And somebody comes in, even if that person did attend that school, and comes in and targets, having made all of the brainstorming and plans to target this particular school. And you're telling me that there's no conversation at all about how these people lost their life because they were in, at the end of the day, why? Because they were Christians and they wanted to go to a school that held Christian views. That is the real reason that these people lost their lives. This lady, victim that died, who ran the school, her job cost her her life. Who knew that being, the person that runs this Christian school, it was going to cost her life one day? Who knew that these children that come from Christian backgrounds, families, because they are Christians, it would cost them their life because they attended a school that was Christian? Because somebody decided that for whatever reason, and the manifesto hasn't been released yet, but from what has been reported as of today, there are reasons to believe that this murderer had resentment for having to go to that school. And why that school? Because it's a Christian school. In this country, nobody, even victims, if you want to categorize the murderer as a victim, not even a victim has the right or the justification or enough pain or enough mental illness to do such an evil thing to people that did nothing to you but hold to Christian values. They have every right to believe what they have the freedom to believe in this country. And you, because you hold different views, because you resent those values that speak against your lifestyle, if that was the motivation, that does not give you a right to dismiss their worldview and to cause them harm. And the same thing goes the other way around. No Christian has the right to harm anyone else with a different worldview. And let's be clear, physically harm, murder anyone with a different worldview. It's time for Christians to be more outraged and to come out of this desensitized mindset, this apathy. And I'm not saying you have to win an argument. I'm not saying you have to have a lack of self-control in the way you speak, in the way you interact. I'm not saying you have to have a hatred for the LGBTQ community or even the media or the president, the government. All I'm saying is you need to do whatever you can in your part. Like for me, it's making this video. Maybe for someone else, it's just having a conversation with your family member. Maybe it's sharing a tweet. Maybe it's, your other social media. Just be vocal as a Christian. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying be violent. I'm not saying be hateful, because that goes against the Christian worldview. I'm just saying say something the right way. Now I am going to shift to my reaction as a Republican conservative. And just because I identify as that doesn't mean I agree with everything that the Republican Party stands for, just so you know. But my reaction when I heard the president joking, entertaining the media that's about to record his response to the shooting, I don't care if the whole world knows that I don't care if we all expect that from the president. We need to say that was grossly inappropriate. Jokes when the country is devastated by what it happened. What would happen if all the Christians were to figure out a hashtag, for example? What would happen if we all just said the president was highly offensive and inappropriate? And what would happen if our voice became noticed, right? There would be some type of accountability at least. Because at least we wouldn't just be like, of course. At least we would be like, hey, all of our voices together, you have to listen to us. What you did was so wrong. What would happen if we just said, it was distasteful of the president to push his political agenda in his response to this tragedy. It was incredibly insensitive to the victims and their families and their community for you to have a political conversation instead of a humane conversation and just mourn for their loss. Take a minute, Mr. President. Take a minute. Absolutely share what you believe is the solution. But shifting blame? That's also very distasteful. I just want to encourage Christians to say something in the right way. Like the Bible says, live in such a way that no one can hold something against you, just like Jesus. When they were trying to figure out how can we, justify murdering him. And they couldn't find something, so they had to bring false testimony about him, twist his words. And in the same way, the way we respond and make our voice known, no one should be able to detract from our message because of our actions that are wrong. I absolutely believe that it is beneficial for our country for us to have conversations about the solutions, but we cannot have those conversations until we actually discuss the problem, what actually happened, and without us trying to use it as a political prop to justify our political convictions. We need to take a moment and say, Christians were a victim in this shooting. Don't just lump it with all the other school shootings. No, this one was a Christian school shooting. And with all due respect, I propose we have our own category, okay? And we deal with it in the way that Christians believe needs to be dealt with. If this community believes that the solution is to have better security, I saw that the shooter just shot through glass doors. I just thought, what would happen if they would have just changed those doors so that it would have been harder for someone to just enter with a gun like that? What would have happened if there was someone armed already there to protect that school? There are a lot of different solutions that should be on the table. We don't just need to say, we need the Democrat solution. And I get it. I get that people are passionate and that everyone reacts differently to this. But we need to be able to see, hey, this was not just a shooter just like everyone else. let's pause. Everyone is jumping to mental illness. Do we even know that? Have we gotten the facts yet? Was this person suffering from mental illness? Was that the cause? I don't believe it's right for us to say that just because someone suffers from mental illness, that already means that they're going to go kill people. Because guess what? There are so many people that suffer from mental illness that will never do something like that. In my Christian perspective, I believe that this is something demonic. When somebody plans and goes through with murdering people, innocent children, I believe the enemy is behind that. And it may look like the enemy takes advantage of certain situations in a person's life, and the person starts to get filled with hatred, and that will spiral, and there's just a long process I'm sure this person went through. But let's just take a moment and talk about, this was sure, it's relevant. This was someone that identified as a trans man. This is someone that went to this school. So what actually happened? I think we need to just stay there. And I think that government leaders need to just stay there for a day or two and be responsible, because we need all the facts before we can reach a conclusion. That's what I really dislike, that everyone is just lumping it. Okay, here's another case. It's all your fault. We have the solution. You're not even talking about what happened. You're not even saying, we're all Americans with different worldviews. We need to respect each other. We need to live with tolerance. And that means disagreeing with each other and having healthy conversations. We're not even talking about that. And that's really sad. I will say that I did see someone that identifies as, I think they identified as, well, I'll just say someone in the LGBTQ plus worldview. And although I completely disagree, and I think God has his best for them, I don't like that. According to my worldview, that person needs Jesus. I don't like seeing people that are being, in my worldview, are being deceived, and they don't have that promise of eternal life. But that person posted saying that there is no excuse for someone like that murderer, no matter how they identified. That person was not going to make any excuses for that murder. And I thought, bravo. So if you are someone from the LGBTQ community, I say bravo if you stand up with the Christians and say, that has no place in our country. No matter what your worldview is, that will never be justified. And that's the message I would say for non-Christians. Please, say something too. Say something like, that was evil, no matter how someone identifies. That was evil, and there's no excuse for it. So I want to encourage everyone to pray for the families. It's really sad. It's so sad because, my daughter, she's about to turn 9 years old in 2 days. And now that I'm a mom as my children are getting older, I realize 9 is not very old. When you're younger, age just kind of seems like older. But when you get there, as a mom of an almost 9-year-old, those were babies. Innocent little babies. And all the victims, not just the lives that were lost, but the victims that lived through that and were hiding and were crying and have probably nightmares. And the parents, can we have some sensitivity to them? Can we just pray for them and keep our political comments to ourselves for a moment? Let's have a conversation about what the solution should be for this particular situation. But let's take a moment. So I encourage you to say something, no matter if you are a Christian or a non-Christian, someone from the LGBTQ community. I encourage you to say something and let's let our government and our culture hear our voices coming together and standing up for what is right. If you like this video, please give it a like so that more people will see it. Alrighty, I'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Undeserving us, you redeemed us still because of your